Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Inkwell exchange. I am so excited for today's author. 1 second, and I will get her. Everyone could come and listen to this conversation. I think you're in for a real treat. I've only met this author once, but I think you will really enjoy hearing about her work, and both on. We both do children's books, so I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to hear.
Hello.
I can see you. I hear you. Great. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am really, really good. So I just invited everybody to the Inkwell Exchange, which for context and new people, is where we have these conversations with writers, up-and-coming writers, published authors, about their writing processes, their books, any lessons learned, and honestly, just sometimes the whole process that goes into like the writer's lifestyle, I like to call it. So go ahead, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your books, and then I have a bunch of follow-ups.
Okay. I can go first. That's fine.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
So my name is Tam Curley. I go by Tam. I started writing children's books a little over a year ago. I have actually 3 books. 2 of them are part of a book series, and then I'm working on a self-help guide. I just kind of love writing. So I started with children's books. I thought it was easier to kind of get it out there and teach little girls in my books.
I love that. So I also started off writing children's books, or my first book that I have published is Meet Cairo. It is also a children's book. How? I think we've talked a little bit about like my illustrator journey, and huge shout out to my illustrator Donald. But also he's usually on here sometimes too, so maybe he'll pop in a little bit. But also love to hear about how you went about illustrating your book, and tell us about the series too. So I think that's new to a lot of our people. They haven't seen people who have the series yet.
So I don't know anything about illustrating. I actually hired an illustrator that I liked from Fiverr. She's been really good. She did all the illustrations for both of my books in the series. And I just kind of decided I wanted to, like, but my first book is Princess Sky's hair story, and it talks about her natural hair just becoming, natural. And then book number 2 talks about her transitioning into locks. But it talks about the story behind locks. And it's basically is Princess Sky's Locks Like Magic, and it kind of draws in the history of locks as well as the biblical story of Samson having his locks cut off, losing all of his power. So I thought that was a perfect way to title it Locks Like Magic. And really, all together to tie into the series is not about hair. The end all is self-love overall. So that's what it will end with.
I love that. I love that. I think I'll also double tap what you said about Fiverr. I got lucky, and my publisher actually knew of an illustrator. But we had a huge time difference. Donald is based in Africa, and I'm here in the U.S. And it was kind of
Yeah.
weird to figure out what communication styles worked for us best. But also, I think a big part of the illustration process on my end was important for me to have a Black illustrator, because so much of the material in Meet Cairo is also about self-love,
Yes.
but it was also about creating what I call like an adjacent universe where it's okay and easy, right, for a Black girl to exist and have adventures and run around without her parents. Like they have all of these other books where these kids are just kind of self-sufficient, having their whole lives. And I think one of the things that I realized as a young reader was never going to be my existence, right? The likelihood that I walked out of my house, one, without my parents realizing it, no way. And second of all, the thought that I end up in a completely different city or a completely different world and nobody's noticed I'm gone or had questions when I come back, right, didn't exist. That was a fantasy. And I think think what made it really true that it was a fantasy was that all the characters that it happened to were white. And so I love that. Was me, Cairo was kind of my opportunity to create this little adjacent world where it is safe enough for little Black girls and her pet dog, right, to run around their neighborhood and meet really nice people who want to help them along or help Lily find her dog. And it not be dangerous, or the questions of like, why are you out here by yourself? Or why are you not with your parents? Or things like that, because all of those questions go unasked in mainstream children's stories as well. So I think that's really important. And that's one way that I think my Black identity kind of played a part in my book. But I think there was another thing that you touched upon that we'll also have a future Inkwell exchange on. But I would love to hear a little bit about how faith played a role in your work. It sounds like you referenced the Samson story. How have you seen, other people connect to that particular thread in your work?
Not necessarily, but I thought there are a lot of faith religions, spiritual people out there. And I thought, well, the oldest book in the world teaches the history of locks.
Yeah.
And there's so many different stories. And even in the book, it says it depends on who you ask. And so you can ask a believer, you can ask a non-believer, whatever the reasons are. It follows all the way back to Egypt, having locks. And now we're seeing all these laws. I've been in the public sector. I've been a civil servant. So I'm a EEO investigator, certified mediator, all those things. So I'm very aware of all the laws that affect people of color, specifically Black women. And in the workplace, we couldn't dare go on an interview with our hair not straightened. And so that book kind of shows the history and the love and the powers behind it, whether you believe in Christian, history of Christianity or whatever it is you believe in. It kind of reaches more than one audience, I believe.
No, I love that. And I think the angle, I love the angle about Black hair, because in particular, I can remember as you were talking about like straightening your hair for an interview, I remember, and I feel like this has changed fairly quickly, and I don't think we realize how quickly. Yeah. So for context, when I was doing applications for scholarships for me to go to college, I was still straightening my hair before any important, like I would make sure I wasn't getting my hair braided, because I was like, okay, that's a 3-month like commitment. What if I have an interview or a scholarship or whatever before the end of the 3 months, and I've wasted my braids because God forbid I'm not going to wear that to the interview. Or I have to like tie it back in like the tightest bun possible and almost like kill my head for the duration of the interview. So like, and I graduated college in 2019. I was applying for college in 2015. It is only 2023. And I would say probably it's within the last 2 years that I've been like, oh yeah, no, I'm a braids girl. Like almost any time you see me, I'm going to be in some form of braids, sometimes faux locks, but like usually it's some version of like these. But that's just what I like. But so much I was putting that off or having to defer to other things because wearing my natural hair is not the easiest for me. Mostly because sometimes I don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes it doesn't know how to deal with me. I think that's a super awesome message. And sometimes gets forgotten because of how quickly we've had this shift where things like the Crown Act, which I think you alluded to, in certain states have made it like illegal to fire Black women for their hair, but it doesn't make it illegal to make people uncomfortable about their hair. I went to an all-white Catholic school, and that was definitely a thing. I'd come in with short hair one day, long hair the next day, and they're like, oh my God, how'd you grow it? And it's like, know. And like it's an awkward conversation because it's like, well, you're sitting here and you know, like, how do you answer stupid sometimes, right? Like, and that's a really hard conversation to have, especially when you're 15, 16, 17, 18, and they may be your friends and you don't want to make them feel dumb, but that doesn't really work for you. So I love that. I love that how that lived experience shifts into your work. You also mentioned you're working on a self-help guide. I think that's the epitome of lived experiences informing your work. Tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so many years ago, I was living in California. I worked at a federal halfway house. My job was to help ex-offenders coming from the federal prison system transition into employment. But I saw a need for other things besides just telling them they had to get an employment or go back to prison. So this self-help guide has been a long time coming. I've worked as a grant reviewer for the Department of Labor. So not directly, but indirectly, still working with that population for companies all over the country, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, state organizations that are providing training services for the hard-to-hire population. And so I decided I wanted to do a self-help guide, and I actually want to not only do a self-help guide for ex-offenders, but as I'm getting feedback, they were like, oh, you need to do this for everybody. And I just said, this is good information. So now I'm thinking about making those different parts, like a self-help guide for ex-offenders, a self-help guide for, I work with foster children now. So for foster people that are aging out of the system, the self-help guide, there's all kind of people that could benefit from a self-help guide, like long-term unemployed. They need to know, where do I go? Where is the demand now for jobs? Where do I start redeveloping myself in my 30s and 40s after being laid off from a career that I've been on, in for the last 10 years. So there's a lot of different avenues that ways that I can reach other audiences. But this is my baby, I guess I can say, because it's been kind of sitting in there waiting for editing and proofreading, and I've been putting it off. I'm still putting it off, but it's almost there, and I think it's going to benefit a lot of men and women who are incarcerated, so that when they get out, they're not like, uh-oh, what do I do with myself? They already have their plan. It's a workbook. They're going to write stuff down and do some research and get friends and family to assist them. So
I like that. How is writing your self-help guide, like on a practical level, feel different than writing your children's books? So, and I'll prequel it with this, which is when I'm thinking about, writing as an art, sometimes we get, especially artists, we get very caught up in in the creative process of it all. So in particular, I write a lot of poetry and spoken word. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is a very creative and emotive work. But also in my 9-to-5, I'm in PR, which is a very informative, sometimes persuasive, but mostly very straightforward form of writing. And so I think it's very interesting to explore this informative side of a creative art, which can be more about conveying information. So how is that different, or how are you in a different mode when you're working on your self-help guide versus your creative?
Easy, because professionally, like I said, I've been a compliance officer, investigator. I do background investigations, private investigations, and I'm a mediator. So I learned to write technical and informative, and writing reports that are clear and concise, that answer the questions who, what, when, where, how, and why. So I use that same technique to write the self-help guide. Like, what is it that they really need help with? Just knowing the population, how do I write this to where it's not so technical and not creative, of course, but more technical and informative, and it's going to help them successfully transition. And so that's kind of I learned to write on both sides of it. So creatively to entertain, and I've learned to write technical and informative just as a career person. So it's been pretty easy.
I love it. So do you we talked about it sitting in. What made you finally decide that you were like, okay, I got to put a deadline on this. I got to get it edited. I've got to do this because I've been sitting on, for instance, I like to put myself in other people's shoes because I won't say you're the only person. I've been sitting on poetry work for years and still have yet to be like, okay, I feel really comfortable. I'm gonna go ahead and hit that, like, go find an editor, go do this type to combine those works into a book. What helped you like make that last step?
Oh gosh. It was something I've always wanted to do, even before children's books. And I thought I took the easy route by doing children's books because they're easy to write, right? Children like books and pretty pictures, and you can put a quick little learning, educational component to it, and you're done. Well, what made me, and I'm still putting it off because I had a launch date actually of May the 8th. Initially, I had it April, and I'm like, oh my God, now I'm so tied up with my professional career, developing my LLC that I started last year and creating my other business. I'm like, I don't have time to launch this thing.
Right.
But I'm the editor, I'm the proofreader, I'm the everything, right? For this, because there's no illustrations that need to be done. So it's just me. So you just have to, I set that date. Even if I don't reach that date, at least I'm not gonna put it off another 6 months or a year because it's right there. I just have to sit down and look at the chapters. I actually sent, the first 4 chapters to one of my cousins, the other 4 chapters to another. Hey, read through this and give me feedback, and they did. So I have a advisor, I guess, or a panel of editors helping me kind of keep focus. So I think it's really important, yes, to set those dates as, so you can just keep to it. And eventually you'll get to where you want to be, which is getting your book of poems published. It's just, yeah, you have to just do it. You have to just set those guidelines and you have to focus on it. And you have to make time. And that's my problem. I haven't made time, but you have to make time. Set a goal each week to do something towards your book if that's your ultimate goal.
I love that because we had I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, 20 pages for our children's book is a lot less intimidating than the 100-page manuscript I have on my computer with poems. And I was like, and I think the other things I was saying was, I think also the other thing that's really hard for some creatives, if it's a story close to your heart, like we've talked to, like a Tiffany Lewis, who her memoir was her baby, or me with my poetry, or Quan, who's also another author we've had on, in his poetry, there's an emotional component to it about like releasing those stories into the world, that I think also can play a role in like stalling. So I think the idea of setting a date is important. The other thing that I will mention / shameless plug is the Inkwell Exchange has a Facebook community for people who need a little help as far as motivation, to get writing, to start writing, to make some time to write, find an accountability buddy, find other members of the community that are into writing. Most of our members are based here in Texas, so super happy to, it's a great place to try and find somebody to get a coffee with so you can force yourselves to write. But the link's in my bio if you want to join the Inkwell Exchange. But I think also bigger than just the Inkwell Exchange, that community is extremely important. I will give a huge shout out to Michael Glenn, who is one who has asked me 7 million times / every time he sees me, to finish a book, to finish my poetry book in particular. But also, and I think I'll shift our conversation to the promotion of books, right? Because I think that's the next step. After you've written it, after you've published it, sometimes people forget to tell you, like, okay, but you're going to have to promote this, because if you write a book and nobody knows about it. Yeah. And I think that's the scariest part, sometimes, because I'm not the person who's going to like walk up to you and be like, hey, I have a book, will you buy it? And I am proud of my book. I love my book. And I will sell you a copy if you see me and ask me about it.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I have to be prompted. Thankfully, I have my mother who has not that problem at all and is very proud to tell you that I have a book. But how did you go about promoting your book?
I still struggle in that area because a part of me, I'm like an introvert, and it's like you said, how do you walk up to people and tell them about yourself, right? And then you can't really depend on friends and family sometimes on Facebook to help promote your stuff. They're like, they'll look at it, but they won't share it or whatever. So my first book, I did a lot of vendor events. I focused, I was working a lot, but I did manage to sign up like once a month or every other month for a vendor event because I'm meeting new people. I'm meeting other business owners. They're helping promote me, but it's all about making those connections. I think, I think I met you at an event at a school. So signing up any opportunity that you get, whether it's free, whether it's paid, whatever, just showing up, putting your name out there. If you're like me and kind of, timid and don't really like walking up to people and telling them what you do, at least you're there. They're going to walk up to your table if you got a good presentation, and then you get to talk about it. And it's not really like promotion, rather you're just having a conversation why I wrote it, and they look at the product and they're going to more than likely get your product. I mean, connecting with the local libraries is a good starting place. And yeah, so I think it's very important just to make those connections, sign up for different events, and get your name out there. And of course, you have to use social media because that's just where we are today.
It definitely is. And I think I'll double tap that the power of showing up, the power of being present is huge. There is so many opportunities that I don't think I would have had the opportunity, or I wouldn't have had the chance to participate in at all if I hadn't shown up. And not in the sense that like I showed up and I knew there was going to be an opportunity and I just made it there on time and looked good and blah, blah, blah. No, I showed up at events that were not for me, and I was not the star of. Most of the time going to promote other people or support other people. And, my gift, it made space for me. And I think that is so important as well, is sometimes you just got to go to the thing, right? And I'm an introvert. Trust me, this bed right here is calling my name. It's Saturday morning. I understand. But sometimes you do have to, if you get up, right, you'll go to an event, and sometimes it'll be an evening event. You'll sell 5 books, and you didn't even perform. Or it's an open mic. You go and maybe read a little bit of your work. Give people a teaser and be like, "Hey, I have books if you want to buy them." Yeah. The art scene is really good for that. I've heard very good things about vendor events and festivals. I will say I have yet to do them, but definitely that, because PR is in my blood. I would tell, like, I love social as a space to promote your book. I love podcasts and interviews and all of that stuff. But I put a lot of effort into aesthetic, right? And I think a topic for another day, but I probably would. I have some thoughts about like how much I wish I had put into aesthetic, how much maybe I wish I had pulled back, especially at the beginning. I think I put a lot of effort into making sure things looked really professional, really polished the first time out the gate. And while I don't regret that for me because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, I'm not sure I would recommend it for other people, especially if you're giving it a try, because people forget there are dollar signs behind that polish, right? There are dollar signs behind that. Going to an vendor event, even if it's $20 for the table, you still got to get a tablecloth, and you may need to run to Staples and get you like a banner or something to draw people to your table. Sure enough, that's money you can't make back, but sometimes it's worth thinking through, like self-publishing, that's dollar signs, right? So one of my cousins is about to journey down this whole publishing route, and I was like, one of the things that's super important is set your budget, stick to it, and be willing to lose whatever you're putting into it, right? So that you have something sort of uh, you have basically a cliff, right? And you can see when you're getting close to the cliff and know, like, hey, have I spent all of my budget and I still have no promotion on it?
Yeah.
Or, you know, does it make sense to promote outside my area? Maybe I should only be promoting here. Maybe I should spend it at festivals, which may give me a little more budget to do other stuff rather than, you know, focusing on getting like super pretty branding, right? Like that. Those are decisions that have to be made, especially if you can't do it yourself. You have to invest in Canva. You have to invest in, I just recently got like the script to edit these all pretty, right? Like those are decisions that have to be made. And yes, so writing a book is a creative art. Love the creative side of it, but it's also a business.
Yeah.
So with that, I will pass it back over to you. Please tell my audience how they can support. Oh, hi, Donald. So great to see you. We were just talking about your amazing illustrations. Go back and watch it. But please do tell people how they can support you, how they can get your works, follow you, all of that good stuff. I want to make sure we're supporting all the artists that come on here.
Yes, I do have a website. It's pretty easy to remember, I would think. It's authortam.com. It has all my social links on there, so you can connect with me on the social platforms through my website. And if they want to buy books through my website, it links to Amazon. It links, or they can order directly from me. So yeah, just follow me at authortam.com.
Perfect. It's so great to have you. Thank you so much for joining the Inkwell Exchange. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you the best amount of success. And I hope for our audience, everybody goes out and conquers their day. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much, Tam.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.